Episode 71 of Utah in the Weeds coming at you. My name is Tim Pickett. I am your host, medical cannabis expert, so to speak, medical provider here in Utah, founder of UtahMarijuana.org and Utah Therapeutic Health Center, a series of medical cannabis specialty clinics here in the great state of Utah. Today we're talking to Brad Daw. He's a former legislator, a key person in the medical cannabis program. He was in the room, quote unquote, when major decisions were being made, especially with regard to the updates of the medical cannabis program over the past few years. I think this is interesting for patients in Utah and advocates alike. From a housekeeping perspective, tune in to Discover Marijuana YouTube channel. We do webinars every other week and have a released video talking about the science and medicine of cannabis. The best way to get a hold of me or ask a question is simply to go to that YouTube channel and comment on one of the videos. We look at every question and answer all of them as best we can. You can subscribe to the podcast on any podcast player that you prefer. All episodes are on UtahMarijuana.org. Again, UtahMarijuana.org/podcast. This is Utah in the Weeds. I'm Tim Pickett. Introduce yourself a little bit. Describe your history, especially that in the legislature.
I began my legislative service after the election of 2004. That's when I was first elected. And I was in for a number of years. And then for reasons that, to put it bluntly, I took on payday lenders. And they have a lot of money, and they decided to target me. And in 2012, they took me out. In 2014, what they had done became readily apparent, and I got back in. And that's really when I started the whole thing with medical cannabis, was around that time. And then I was in until just this last year, and really enjoying it. So. And I've worked on a number of issues. I worked a lot on prescription drug abuse. I've worked on election transparency, honest elections. Worked a lot with, with healthcare and making it affordable and trying to find a way to get access for people who don't normally have access. Trying to change the healthcare model to one that makes a little bit more sense than our current system does. So. Those are just a couple of areas that I have specialized in.
Do you feel like you're somebody who hangs to the right on the political spectrum, or where do you fit in the left to right?
Well, I tilt right. I'm from Utah County, so in Utah County, I'm right in the middle. But I tilt to the right. So Make no mistake about it. I come at things from I use terms not to, in a way, disparage them, just kind of give you a feel of what I believe in.
Yeah.
I believe in government should be limited but not non-existent, that government does have a role, but we should always be mindful of the fact that the vast majority of people choose to make good decisions and really don't want to pay a lot in taxes unless they're getting, ever. And whatever they do pay in taxes, they want to see they're getting a rock solid benefit for the money that they're being required to give.
Right.
So, and I always want to be clear about that. I've heard some politicians call taxes contributions, and it just makes me kind of gag. It's not a contribution. You are required to give taxes. And I need to always remember that. So, like I said, I want government to have a light hand, but understand that they do have a particular role in many areas that they're only suited for, and we need to understand that. So, yes, I lean to the right, and I also think I lean towards the idea of solving problems, not just being an ideologue. So,
right, not just legislating because you can, you see a potential issue and then try to fix that issue.
Exactly. That's the whole idea. Is let's look at the issue, and frankly, let's consider all perspectives. Let's look at those who lean left, those who lean right, all across the spectrum. Let's gather ideas, and let's run that through kind of my preference, which is that government take the least invasive role they can. And then from that, let's see if we can find a solution.
Did you, when you were working in healthcare, we're 2010, right? 2008. Are you talking about medical cannabis at all at that clear back then?
No, it was on the radar. It didn't get on the radar for me until, well, you know what? You probably know this better than I do. When did Charlotte's Web kind of hit the national news?
Yeah, that's a good, I'll tell you right now.
It seems like that was around 12, 13, 14, around there.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think the critical events started right then in July 2013.
Yeah.
That's the summer when we're talking about it, right?
I think so. Yeah. Charlotte's Web kind of, I mean, for me, that was a paradigm shift. I mean, you hear people talking about medical cannabis. California has had medical cannabis for 30 years now. And all the time you're just kind of in the back of your head saying, okay, great. You've got a way to get a hold of some marijuana and, get high. Show me some evidence of actual medical efficacy. Show me what it is. And it wasn't that I was closed-minded. Some people might disagree, but it was that, look, show me what you got. Put your cards on the table. If there's really genuine medical use for it, let's have it. And with Charlotte's Web, we had to start saying, well, at least this substance called CBD has some use. And that kind of opened the door for me and said, all right, the notion that, marijuana is a Schedule I drug, or cannabis is a Schedule I drug, which means it has no real medical benefit that outweighs its risk or abuse potential, just didn't fly anymore. It's like we have to change our thinking. And it's clear that the federal government wasn't going to. So that's what got me in the space. Now, my degree is in electrical engineering. I have no, other than having been a patient many, many times because of some injuries I had when I was a child, that's my contact with the healthcare industry. So I'm a guy who comes at it with hopefully an unbiased view, or at least a view that's not trying to, put my thumb on the scale for any one group or another, but just trying to do what's right.
You're basically trying to be like an innocent educated bystander. We're going to take both sides. I represent my district, and you represent a fairly conservative part of the state.
Right.
So was there discussions at that time about, going towards THC like California, or it seems to me like in my memory, I'm graduating PA school at this time. At the University of Utah, I can't remember, although we were buried in school, I can't really remember a bunch of, discussions about, like, let's bring medical marijuana on board in 2013, 14.
For me, it was, I mean, where I started with was, okay, CBD is definitely something we need to look at. And again, take the cautious approach. If that's the substance that has medical benefit, let's explore it. Let's find a way to make it available in a way that's legal and also regulated for safety and consistency and that sort of thing. So you're not just buying, your CBD at the gas station and hoping that it's not laced with something really exciting.
Right.
It's something that you would get off of a drugstore shelf. That's what we wanted to get to, was you can be assured that this CBD that you're buying has the same level of quality and assurance as if you bought a bottle of Tylenol, ibuprofen, or anything else. What it has in it is what it says it has in it. So,
at the time, were there a lot of people that were really against, or did you feel like this was something that you had a lot of support for?
There was a lot of angst, and I mean, what really happened is toward the end of the session. And I want to say this is the 2014 session, because that was my first session back in. I Evan Vickers and I had a long history together. He had been on the Health and Human Services Committee in the House with me, and then now he was in the Senate in 2014, and we were good friends. And of course, he's got a pharmaceutical background, and he was somebody I trusted and still trust completely. And so I said, listen, I don't want this to be driven by those who I think might have a motive beyond just medical. In other words, they might be using medical as a wedge issue to push for recreational. I want this to be pushed as a way to provide medical relief to those who actually would genuinely benefit from it. So that's when I started with Evan, is in 2014, looking at it. And we've been kind of on that road ever since together. So I mean, he's kind of stuck with it now, but
yeah, he's definitely stuck with it all the way. Yeah. To be like a essentially the leader in the the THC side of things from a legislative standpoint through now. How did that progress until there's this period of time in 2017, you said, when you essentially got primaried out. Is that what they call it?
2018, yeah.
2018.
I got eliminated. Well, no. I'm sorry. It was just this last year. What am I thinking? It's 2020. So I was in.
It's been a long year.
Yeah. I mean, 2020. It was just I mean, let's call it what it was. I won't use the word because we're being recorded, but a what kind of storm. So
yeah,
right?
It's been a long 2 years of a year. I feel like, and some of that still lingers. With this, there's just so much still to deal with. It seems like we're at now. Yeah. So 2020. So you go all the way through. Right. How does this? What changed your mind about involving THC? Was it really just the referendum, the ballot initiative?
No, it wasn't at all. In fact, if you look at the bill that we started with, it allowed for some level of THC along with the CBD. We were leery of raw flower, and still a little leery of raw flower, frankly, but we were open to the idea that some level of THC is effective. And our bill got modified to the point where we were open to up to 50-50 THC, CBD, and so forth. And honestly, we were willing to do more than that once we got doctors on board and evidence in place that demonstrated that it was effective. In fact, we passed a bill, it was thoroughly mocked, but it was a right to try, which allowed for full strength cannabis. And the idea there was, that was kind of our toe tap into, basically whatever kind of cannabis you want. Now, we weren't quite ready to endorse raw bud, but we were certainly ready to endorse anything else. And that's where it got to. And again, we're trying to follow the evidence. I mean, there was concerns about the abuse potential of THC, and that's why we think that should be in the care of a doctor. On the other hand, I passed another bill. This is kind of one I did on my own with Senator Hinkins for hemp, and that one allows you to buy CBD products over the counter. So, where there can be abuse, like there can with opioids, you want to go through a doctor, but where there's not really an abuse potential, sell it over the counter and just ensure, like you do with Tylenol and so forth, that it's safe.
This is the bill. Yeah, and this is the bill that regulated or that started the process where now we have companies, and there's been some really good things about this. I've interviewed Blake Smith from Zion Medicinal, and I do a YouTube channel, Discover Marijuana, with him. And we talk about that certificate of analysis on all the CBD products, right? Where you've just got products. There's so many products across the nation, even too, where you don't know what's in there.
Yeah. And there's some charlatans. I've heard of people putting all manner of weird stuff in with their CBD. I want to say some kind of blood thinner or something like that. I don't even know what they're thinking. I mean, and
Yeah.
different kinds of opioids and laced them with fentanyl and you know, heaven knows what. And of course, it's all illegal, but they find ways to sell it, and then we have to go out and figure out what's in it. And nope, that's not it. So again, that's why we think there needs to be that government oversight saying, okay, we will analyze the product and ensure that it is what you say it is. But that's the extent of our oversight, is we guarantee that it's pure and that it's accurate on the label. And then we allow people, in the case of CBD, to say, well, I can decide what and how I'll take it.
Everybody's going to be dying to know, are you somebody who's consumed CBD? Have you used it for anything?
Yeah, I use it for a sleep aid.
Do you find it helps?
Yeah, it's pretty effective. I mean, it's the nice thing about it is it doesn't produce any kind of a high. It just it has some CBN in it as well, or CBG or something like that. There's
CBN.
There's more in there that is more effective as a sleep aid, and I find that it actually works pretty well. I have been on a prescription sleep aid that it's not bad, but I kind of want to get off of it, and so this actually works. So yes, I consume CBD. I have no problem with it at all. Yeah,
the CBD and the CBN are good. That's a good combo.
And it's a reputable company that's trying to play ball by the rules, and they're doing a good job. And I'm very happy to work with them and support their product.
So, what does the legislature have against the flower? Is it really just because the argument I've heard that I tell my patients, frankly, you know, because we're a no flame state in the THC side, right? Is there's a lot of lung damage that you're avoiding by not using, a flame. But is that the only argument that was happening at the time? I mean, is it this image of raw bud?
It depends who you talk to. Law enforcement doesn't like it because there's no way to properly distinguish between legal and illegal marijuana, right? I mean, that's a problem for them. And people say, well, I can put it in a container. Yeah, well, I can go buy a container and put raw bud in it. So that's a problem for them. And we can just, you can dispute whether marijuana should be illegal or not. But for law enforcement, since it's still illegal, they have a concern with that. There is kind of the notion that raw bud is just a little bit easier to abuse. I mean, I don't know if that's true or not, but it seems at least to be more related to what you do recreationally, and it feels a little less like a medicine. So there's kind of an image thing about it. Now, I was concerned about it because it seemed like you got kind of real problems with dosing and accuracy. I mean, the fact is, if you take two different, I mean, especially me as a novice, you take raw bud from two different bins, and one of them makes you higher than the kite, and the other one makes you drowsy. And, dosing's a little bit tricky. Now, maybe it's not, but I've talked to Ed Red, and he says, well, no, the fact is if you take raw bud and you measure it pretty carefully and you know what you're getting to begin with, and you vape it right, you get a pretty accurate dosing. So I'm a little less leery of raw bud. And really, for me, the only angst I have left about it is it's the same, it's a kissing cousin to illegal use of cannabis. It's kind of the same thing where, we sell morphine, we don't sell heroin. We sell morphine in pills and shots and that sort of thing. We don't sell the black tar that you heat with a spoon and then mainline. I mean, you know what I'm saying? It's the same kind of a concept of, if it's medicinal, let's create genuinely medicinal forms. So if raw bud's a medicinal form, so be it.
Got it. And it's kind of heartening, frankly, to hear you say things that I would anticipate. I would hope that the legislature understands. For, I was just back in North Carolina testifying at a state Senate Judiciary Committee meeting, and in North Carolina they're trying to pass a medical marijuana bill. right now, and they have good, they have good support. But the legislatures we talked to, boy, it was, some of them really don't know anything at all about, I mean, I hate to put it that way, but that's just the fact. It was pretty interesting. So timeline goes a little forward. The 2018, you're now the chief sponsor of the cannabis. Was that the cannabis updates or the original?
That's the update.
That was the update. So we already had.
The what happened is the referendum passed. Now, this may be a point of argument or contention, but the referendum as passed was unworkable. I mean, it had some very blatant contradictions in it. And both sides, I think, ultimately acknowledged that it had some real problems. They had negotiated a compromise. I had been adamant enough about, this is a wedge issue towards recreational, that it was better for me not to be in the negotiations. And the sponsor in the House of the compromise bill that basically, some people will say overturned, I would say properly implemented the referendum, not the referendum, the initiative.
Yeah, the initiative, because the initiative allowed, there's, in the industry, and there's some patient groups who are like, okay, we had, I think they had smokable flower, and they had grow your own, they had home grow, and the compromise. But the story, as the story's been told actually on this podcast with Desiree Hennessy from the Utah Patients Coalition, the LDS, one of the big players, the LDS Church, said, look, we're going to oppose this, and that's not going to go well in Utah. And the legislature agreed with some of the things that needed to be changed. And so before it even passed, this was already, if it does pass, we're going to compromise. We're going to do something with it.
No, either way. Either way. Yeah, it was going to go either way.
I see.
So, I mean, there was no, now, by it passing, it probably accelerated the timeline, because like I say, there were some issues in there that needed to be addressed immediately, because they put law enforcement and doctors and patients in kind of an impossible situation. And I'd have to go back and kind of think about what it was, but it was a very difficult situation. But the gentleman's agreement, which I firmly believe would have been honored, is whether or not the initiative passes, we will move forward with this compromise. And the LDS Church, which I think was fully prepared to launch a fairly aggressive campaign, backed down. And all that being said, the initiative passed by a fairly narrow margin. So,
yeah.
It was what it was. But there was no intent, if the initiative failed, to basically just go back to square zero. I mean, we had a compromise in place. There had been a full-on press conference in which the LDS Church, legislative leadership, the sponsors of the bill, and everybody had spoken to it. So it would have been a pretty major egg on the face thing if the legislature at that point would have said, well, it didn't pass, so on you. It just wouldn't happen.
So that compromise gets done, and there's a few things right away. I mean, like, that was about when I got involved in 2019, the end of 2019, and we still had the idea that when the first pharmacy opened, as far as the statute was concerned, we were going to get blister packs for flour. And everybody knew there was some things that had to be changed right away, just as a matter of logistics, production. Did you notice that right away when the bill got passed, when the original compromise got passed?
Yep. Look, every year, I mean, when I was up there every year, it was, we started, literally the day after the session. And there were a couple times we even had that special session just to fix something that clearly was broken. And then we'd start the day after the session on the next bill to say, okay, here's the laundry list of things we're going to do next year to kind of clean things up. I mean, the fact is that Utah has never been in the business, and some people take umbrage with this. The fact is what Utah was trying to do was be the FDA, the DEA, and they were trying to create an entire structure that they'd never had to do before. This was all new territory, and we were going to receive no help from the federal government, or maybe didn't even want help from the federal government. We just had to figure this all out. And so, it's a work in progress. I'm a software engineer by profession, and so I'm very used to the idea that you release software that works pretty well, but has bugs in it, and then it's an ongoing process to fix problems as they come up. There's problems now. There's things that are going on now with supply chain and different things like that aren't quite right. There's problems with a lack of research in the state that still need to be fixed. It's going to be an ongoing issue for years to come. And we're looking at other states and seeing what they're doing. And hopefully at some point, there'll be enough states that kind of get together a really good framework that's genuinely medical that the federal government will take notice of and go, okay, maybe we better just have a national program. We have this in, 50 or 49, whatever.
There's now 37 states with some type of program.
States.
It's a lot. Yeah. There's a lot of progress. What other states did you guys look at? Is that a thing you're looking at? Okay, in this state, they're doing this.
Wisconsin, Pennsylvania were two of the main ones. Wisconsin's got a very, very locked down program. Pennsylvania has, I think, a really good program. I can't remember. It seemed like not New Orleans, but Louisiana had a pretty decent program, as I recall, that they were implementing. And what we were looking for is states that generally treated it like medicine and also had a strong research component. So that was the kinds of things we were looking for. We wanted doctors to feel, not just, sometimes you have kind of this niche of doctors who just do cannabis and nothing else. We wanted doctors across the spectrum to say, okay, you know what, this has some legitimate use. I've seen really good peer-reviewed research. I've seen enough information. I'm clear on what the side effects are, what the downside is, the contraindications. Look, you're a PA. You know as well as I do, there are some people you should not be giving THC to.
That is true.
I hope you got to acknowledge that there's some people it's like, you know what, you better not have THC. It will not go well with you.
No, okay? There's definitely not. My personal view is it's great as a medicine. It's can be very effective for certain individuals with certain conditions. It's relatively safe to try for the most part. That's my opinion of it. And that I think bears out in the research. And that's why I'm fascinated with the idea of legislation. Cannabis is unique as a drug because it's legislated. It's one of the only parts of medical practice that just has such a legislative component in this legal crime. There's this whole history in this entire country of marijuana in general.
Yep.
And it puts everybody into it seems like a heightened state. Everybody's got
it does. Well, you're absolutely right. And the reason for that is because you have this conundrum. Federally, it's illegal. What we're doing as a state is basically violating federal law. Now, we can talk about niceties like recommending instead of prescribing and et cetera, and fair use and all that kind of stuff. At the end of the day, it's illegal federally. If the DEA decided to, I think the hue and cry would be fascinating, but the DEA decided to move into a pharmacy in any state in the nation and say, we're shutting you down.
Yeah.
What do you do? The fact is like, this is cannabis and it's illegal. And I don't care what you say, we're shutting you down. The fact they haven't done it is fascinating, but it means we have all these legislative loopholes and pitfalls and traps and all that kind of stuff. It would be much nicer. Two things. It would be nice, really, really nice, if cannabis in general were Schedule II. Look, name some drugs that are Schedule II that are scary.
Yeah. Well, Percocet, Lortab, benzos, they're all but I mean, I go
Cocaine.
along this line, and you have a regulatory framework, you have interstate commerce, you have everything is all set up. If you just
Yeah.
make it Schedule 2, it
You
just
make
it's
it
all
Schedule
there.
2. Well, and all of the research that could go on. Okay, I might be a little more skeptical than you. I think that there have been some serious side effects from cannabis. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But you know what? Let's find out. I mean, good grief. Let's start having some double-blind studies. Let's get this out in the open. I mean, you talk to the U of U, and they say, yeah, well, we have a Schedule 1 license. Well, how many people do you study it on? They finally do have a person study, which I had not seen the results of.
Yep.
They said, well, we study on dogs. Well, good for you. You got a Schedule 1 license. You study on dogs. Way to go.
Right. In
And what do you get your
37
cannabis
states.
for?
Yeah. And now 35,000 Utahns are legal cannabis users now. So
Yeah.
there's got to be more we can do from a human research perspective. Compare it to different drugs. The comparative studies I'm most interested in. Compare Ambien and a little THC and CBD and CBN. Let's compare it. Let's see.
I'd love to see that. I'd love to see that because I think, I mean, everything I hear, and again, from advocates and people who know the chemistry, say a little bit of THC, not a lot. A lot doesn't make you high, but a little bit in there really puts a spark plug on that compound. It really lights it. It makes it much more effective without really modifying, the mood of the person.
Yeah.
So, those kinds of studies where, I mean, the fact is we know how opioids work inside and out. We know them backwards and forwards. We know how a lot of these OTC drugs work. We know that, but cannabis, well, what's the long-term effects? How does it work on kids? What happens if you have other drugs you're taking with it? Well, it's probably safe, but maybe it's not. There might be some new drug that comes out that you take cannabis with it, and it, who knows? So,
yeah, I actually worry about that. Those drug interactions worse than anything is that you'd get somebody on cannabis and they'd be using it fine, and then they come out with something new, and there's no data about it. They're not doing any research about it, and then somebody has a bad outcome.
exactly.
And then if the federal government hasn't fixed it yet, then you've got a worse conundrum, right? But there's still the gun ownership issue. You've got to fill out the form, and you've got to either lie or not buy a gun on your federal HEF form. You've got law enforcement, I think, still, even though there's a little bit of trickiness, I feel like, with law enforcement still, with THC. You've got on the highway side, the federal side, of course, crossing state lines was an issue, up until we had enough product in Utah to sell, but it's still going to be an issue. I mean, you've got a couple of dispensaries who make their living on Utahns right off the border.
Right, and that's true, and all of it. But yeah, you're right. If we could have interstate commerce, we have it be Scheduled 2, we have all the research, I would happily, if I was in the legislature, I would happily roll back our Utah regulation and let it fall under. I mean, the feds do plenty of things wrong and right, but the fact is if we have a consistent regulatory envelope that encompasses all medication, it just seems like it would be better for everybody if we could do that. And this really ridiculous conundrum we have it's just a giant headache.
Do you feel like the qualification list that Utah put together is pretty good? Did you argue one way or the other on, expanding it, things like that? Did you have a part to play in that?
I thought it was okay. And I was comfortable because we got the compassionate use board and we tracked that. And the one thing that comes up pretty clearly is there have been some compassionate use applicants and they have received it. But as I recall, and it's been a while since we've had a hearing on it, but it seems like there's not very many that are having to go the compassionate use route. So they always manage to find something on the list. I mean, the fact is, if you have, let's say you have lupus or something like that, it's not on the list. The fact is, you probably have chronic pain, and that is on the list. So, there's some symptoms you probably have that is on the list somewhere. If you really have something that cannabis is going to help, could we refine it? Yeah, we probably could. And over time, as research comes in, I suspect we will.
Yeah.
But when I see, if we were to see, again, speaking as a not there right now, if we were to see a huge surge in compassionate use for, name your condition, then that's a pretty solid argument. Hey, we should move that to the list. So
Yeah.
I haven't seen that, but maybe it's happening now, but I haven't seen it. So it feels like we probably hit the list pretty close.
Yeah, I think you're, on the medical side, on the medical clinic side, and seeing patients, we have what we call a medical cannabis advisory group with the Utah Cannabis Association, a group of QMPs and pharmacists, small group who's developing a survey. Because on the one hand, you're absolutely right. If you had like lupus or you had something that caused pain, you could qualify under pain, and then you get access. On the other hand, from a medical standpoint, we like to know what the diagnosis is. It's not as good for research if everybody just qualifies for pain. It'd be easier if we had, oh yeah, you qualify for insomnia and you qualify for, neuropathy, and I can separate those out from a research perspective.
Right.
So we like me personally, I kind of, I don't mind the list because you're right. With the chronic pain, that brings in quite a few people who want to and who do qualify for a medical marijuana card. And like I say, on the other hand, I'd like to expand the list a little so we could do a little bit better research and target that.
Well, see, there again, it's kind of a chicken and egg thing. I mean, ideally, what you'd like is something like a PDR, right?
Yeah.
Physician's list reference, which is here's the list of conditions. Here's how cannabis responds to it. Here's maybe the dosage profile you want to look at, and if necessary, here's some black box labels where you really don't want to be using cannabis. It's not the right thing. Here's the drug to drug interaction. If we had all of that research in place, then it would be easy. I mean, I guess the reason that I see for the list more than anything else is you have a lot of doctors out there who are like, I don't know what to prescribe it for. I mean,
it's so true. We do as much
not
education for the other QMPs as we probably do for patients, just because that's the case. Once you once you learn about it, and the growers and the pharmacists, what do you think? This kind of changes gears a little bit. What do you think about the pharmacists in the pharmacies here in Utah? Do you think that was good, a good way to go, or too expensive?
Necessary. Yeah, absolutely necessary. And I'll tell you why. I see other states that have bud tenders who have no qualifications whatsoever or required qualifications, and that that scares me to death. I mean, I've heard stories, and again, maybe anecdotal, maybe I'm just being paranoid, but it would seem to me that if there's no qualification, if all I have is a card, which is not a card saying I have this condition and I need this kind of a dosage profile, which I'm sure you as a PA, that's what you do. You don't just say go buy marijuana, right? You say
no, but there are a lot of there's plenty of QMPs out there, I'm sure, do that. And like you just finished saying, there's a lot of docs and PAs, nurse practitioners, who are going to be like, I mean, I don't know, you qualify, but I don't know what to tell you after that.
And the idea is if we have some specialized pharmacists, that's, in other words, they've got the pharmacy background, so they're very comfortable with, all the things you need to know about dispensing a drug, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then they specialize in cannabis, so they've got that additional expertise that says, okay, we know about dosing, we know about conditions, all that kind of stuff. And so now you've got a resource that people can call and say, well, okay, I've got a patient with so-and-so, what do you think? And have that consultation. And that helps the doctor and the patient because, the doctor is more focused on maybe the body, the physiology, the pharmacist is more focused on the dosage and the side of it, whatever it is, but they work together. with a bud tender, it seems like you have the potential for, I've got a right to shop card. I can now walk into a dispensary in well, let's just say Colorado, right? And the bud tender, if he's even slightly unethical or unscrupulous, or just figures that making money is king, says, you know what, I'm going to try to sell you the most addictive, high producing stuff I can, because I want you as a repeat patient. Now, maybe that's paranoid on my part, but it just doesn't feel medical when you go into a bud tender and he's recommending whatever without any medical training whatsoever. So yeah, to me, the pharmacist is a really important part of the whole medical plan that makes it medicine, not well. I will use an analogy that was promoted by, you know who Scott Imler is?
No.
Scott Imler is the author of the original California Medical Cannabis Bill, and he this day openly regrets some of the things he did, because what he says now about California is the dispensaries in California, and his words, not mine, are nothing more than drug dealers with a storefront. And then we don't want to be that. So to me, the pharmacy is a big deal.
I think there's other states, definitely. I know when I was in North Carolina, they had a lot of questions about the pharmacist and about, that regulation. And it does seem like it's a good argument from a medical standpoint to have a pharmacist in there. We really, we communicate with them all the time. I have another question for you, and that is, why is the state of Utah why did they decide not to charge sales tax?
That was a huge push from Libertas. They don't want any taxes, but it's the same reason we don't charge sales tax on any other medication. If you go and buy opioids from a pharmacy, there's no sales tax. So the idea is that taxing for an important medical thing, important medicine, is kind of you're just digging into the patient even more. So let's not put the state overhead on that. Now, the downside to that is, we could take that sales tax and maybe earmark it a little bit for different things, but that was kind of a negotiated point.
The patients like it. I know the patients still complain that things are too expensive, but there's a lot of reasons for that. And we talk, multiple guests have talked about really how expensive it is now, but comparing that to other states. And then everybody seems to agree that prices will come down for patients over time.
Yeah, we need to increase supply. We need to make sure supply meets demand. And one of the ironies you have is when you have a limited number of growers, it becomes in their best interest to limit the supply. And that's a problem. So it would be nice if there was enough grown to meet demand in an economical way. And of course, some of the demand, there are some patients who just are, since they're paying cash for it, may decide, you know what, I got my insurance, I'll go try a different route. And so that decreases demand in a way you don't want it decreased, because if cannabis really is the better route, you want that to be accessible to the patient. So that's an ongoing problem.
Yeah. So what's next for Brad Daw?
Well, let's see, I've got dinner at 6. Look, I've got public service in the blood. And, what do I do specifically? Well, it depends. I've worked with the hemp growers. I've worked with legislators trying to help, make sure that the hemp law is right, because that's my baby. I did that not on my own, but essentially that was my bill, and got it passed in kind of a miraculous sort of way, honestly.
Yeah.
And and I've been very proud of the fact that Utah has a pretty decent hemp industry now because of it. And of course, I'm very involved in the cannabis side of things. I've been involved in other election issues. So I don't see stepping away completely. I mean, right now I've got plenty going on with work and family and stuff. I've got always plenty to do, but I don't see myself staying completely out of the public arena for any length of time. So I mean, I've come on here doing a podcast, and it's been great fun to talk with you. It's been a real opportunity. So,
yeah, well, thanks for coming on. Is there some place we can follow you, or that listeners can, pay attention to what you're doing?
Honestly, I don't really post much anymore. I don't do much on social media, so not really. I may start up again, but no. I mean, I use my Facebook page for family pictures. I've gotten the like Brad Daw page, but I don't really keep that up to date. If things change, you'll see it. But right now, I don't do much. Most of my work is more behind the scenes, working with people in office and different policymakers. That's kind of where I'm living right now. I'm not doing much publicly.
You're smart.
It has its benefits.
I'm sure that has its benefits at this point in time. Well, thanks again for coming on. You can find these podcasts at utahmarijuana.org/podcast. Again, Brad Daw, thanks for coming. Great conversation. Take care. Is there anything you want to say before we let everybody go?
Genuine pleasure. And, have me back on anytime you like. I really love talking policy, and you've been a lot of fun to talk with. I've enjoyed your medical expertise. That's made it really interesting for me. So I appreciate it, and I'd be happy to come on again anytime.
Great. Thanks. All right, everybody. Stay safe out there.